the number one reason why somebody leaves your website is because they can't find what they're looking for. Why most contractors don't want to talk about cost and price. Number one, they say, well, if they see we're more expensive, we just might scare them away. The thing that actually scares somebody away online isn't great education. It's not when you teach them. It's not when you address their questions well. It's when you ignore their questions. When you're the ostrich with your head in the sand.
Hey, how's it going? It's Tim Brown, and this is the Plumbing and HVAC Hustle Podcast. And today I've got Marcus Sheridan on. How you doing, sir?
Tim, I'm excited to chat with you, man. I love this industry. Let's roll.
We're talking about pricing transparency, why it's important, how to do it in your content, how to work in pricing calculators. We've kind of been doing a series on pricing calculators. We have to talk to the man who's kind of popularized pricing transparency in home services.
Yeah.
How did all that happen? I know that you started in home services, but what led to this like really big push for pricing transparency?
Yeah, let me set the conditions for everybody that doesn't know who I am. I started a swimming pool company called River Pools in 2001 with a couple buddies. Almost lost the business in 2008, like a lot of companies that were struggling during that time because of the crash. That was when I started to really learn about the internet and started to study it and how buyers had changed. And what I derived from my studies was basically, Marcus, if you just obsess over your customers' questions, worries, fears, issues, concerns, and you're willing to address those on your website through text, through video, and online, then you might save your business. So I went to my business partners and I said, listen, here's the deal. We need to become like the Wikipedia of fiberglass pools. If anybody's got a question, I think we need to answer it. And if we do this, we're gonna win their trust. We're gonna dominate on Google, of course, and we might save our business. And so I brainstormed every single question I'd received over the years. And of course, there was quite a few cost questions, pricing questions. And one by one, I would address them on our website and online in the coming years. Make a long story short, Tim, we became the most trafficked swimming pool website in the world. And it completely changed the business. And lead flow was incredible. And it was a game changer. And I started to write about this journey. And as I was writing about this journey on a personal blog, I started getting companies saying, hey, man, can you teach us how to do this? Can you talk about this at our conference, at our event? And that led to me speaking. And that also led to a book called They Ask You Answer, which is really the name of this strategy. And They Ask You Answer has a third version coming out this April, and it's called Endless Customers. And so that's essentially the Ask You Answer 3.0. And I felt like it had to be written because of everything that's happening with AI and search now. But point being is, I have now spent the last 12 years of my life speaking to companies around the world about how to tap into the mind of their buyers and win their trust. And the way you do that is by addressing everything they want, especially their questions, worries, issues, fears, concerns. Now, the number one reason why somebody leaves your website, the number one, is because they can't find what they're looking for. The number one thing they're looking for when they come to any website is the fundamental question of, I'm just trying to get a sense for how much this costs. Anybody that's listening to this right now, if I said to you as a contractor, how many times have you gotten a call and the person said, listen, I'm not going to hold you to it, but just give me a sense. What are we looking at here? I just need to get a feel for it. You see, that is a massive, massive driver in every space, but especially in home improvement. And so if you think about your own behavior as a buyer, and if I said to you, have you gone to a website over the last year and researched how much something cost? You'd say yes. And if I said, and when you're researching how much something costs on that website and you can't find what you're looking for, what's the emotion you experience? You'd say, I'm frustrated. And I'd say, okay, do you keep looking on the website? You'd say, no. And I say, well, do you call that company and inquire? You say, pretty much never. And then I say, well, what do you do? And you say, well, I keep looking and I look until I find. And generally speaking, whoever gives you what you're looking for, they're going to get your business, right? And so the question is, well, why do most contractors not want to talk about this on their website? You see, Tim, there's three primary reasons why most contractors don't want to talk about cost and price. Number one, they say, well, if they see we're more expensive, we just might scare them away. But the reality is this, and we've got the data on this, I've seen the studies on this, it's just so stinking obvious. All right, and listen, I mean, I have more experience than anybody in the world helping businesses discuss pricing on their website. I've got more data, I've got more case studies. I know. So when it comes to this, well, we don't want to scare them away. The thing that actually scares somebody away online isn't great education. It's not when you teach them. It's not when you address their questions well. It's when you ignore their questions, when you're the ostrich with your head in the sand. That really scares them, or it pisses them off, or both, right? So it doesn't scare them that you tend to be a little bit more. What scares them is that you don't explain anything. That's number one. You don't address their question. Second reason why we don't talk about cost and price is we say, well, I don't want my competitors to find out. What's funny about that is if you go to any contractor that's worth their salt and you say, do you have a decent sense as to what your competitors charge? They say, yeah, we compete against each other. I've got a pretty decent sense. And so this is the big secret, non-secret. Everybody acts like nobody knows what everybody's charging, when in reality, everybody pretty much knows what everybody else is charging.
The homeowner
right?
sends the bid to the competitor.
Yeah, you get it all the time.
Yeah.
So there's no ignorance out there. So and besides that, when was the last time your competitors paid your bills? They don't pay your bills. So stop allowing them to stand between you and that magical emotion we call trust. Now, the third reason why we don't talk about cost and price on our websites is we say, well, Marcus, we're very customized. Every job is different. Okay. So if I came to any contractor that's listening to this right now and I said, can you help me understand the factors that drive the cost of a job up? You'd say, yeah, of course I can. If I said, can you help me understand the factors that would keep the cost of a project down? You'd say, of course I can. If I said to you, can you help me understand why are some companies in the industry more expensive, some are less expensive? You'd say, yeah, I could totally explain that. If I said, can you give me a sense for roughly where do most of your customers fall? You'd say, of course I can do that. You see, that's the easiest to explain the whole it depends.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when it comes to discussing cost and price online, there's different levels, Tim. Can I tell you the levels of what they are?
Yes.
Level 0. You have a pricing tab on your navigation bar to your website, and that leads them to a form they can fill out to get a quote. All that does is piss people off. That's why it's called level 0. It's no education, and you've essentially done a bait and switch. Okay? Yeah. That's level 0. Level 1. You've got a really great pricing page on your website in terms of text, where you explain those 5 things I just said. What drives cost up, what drives cost down, why some companies are expensive, why some companies are cheap, roughly where do you fall. You give maybe images that show projects, and they say this, something like this roughly will be in this range. So you haven't said how much it is still, but you've done a really great job of explaining value in the marketplace, which is what everybody wants. Now they have a feel for things. So that's level 1, and good for you if you do that. Level 2, if you do that, plus you have a really great pricing video on your website about each major product or service you sell. And of course, that video goes on social, it goes on YouTube, but a great pricing video does exactly what I just described, except now you're doing it on video and you're showing some of those factors that are going to drive costs up and down, right? You're really explaining it. By the way, it's not a short video. All right, just like your pricing page shouldn't be short, it should be robust. If it's not 1,500, 2,000 words, you've been lazy, you haven't taught it well, you haven't explained it well. Okay, same thing with a video like this. If you do a great pricing video where you really help someone understand, how does pricing work in the plumbing industry? How does pricing work in the HVAC industry? It's like these are things that are going to take 7, 8, 9, 10 minutes long to do with video. So that's level 2, Tim. Okay, Level 3. Level 3 is when you have a pricing estimator. This is the future of home service, right? And you and I have talked about this. I actually developed a tool because they're so freaking effective in terms of lead gen. All right, I developed a tool called PriceGuide.ai, and really it's designed for home improvement contractors to be able to give their prospects a quick, down and dirty estimate, keyword estimate, as to what this person's going to spend, so that they can answer the question, roughly, what is this going to cost, right? Now, you're not giving them a quote. There's a difference between a quote and an estimate, all right? And so this tool works for really any home improvement company. It uses AI, and you can literally, you can have it on your website working in 30 minutes or less.
I had to go to the website and see the pricing real quick just because, the principles.
Yeah,
and
$19 a month.
Only $19 a month and only $190 a year, which is ridiculously cost effective compared to most of the pricing things out there.
Still a lot of money chasing these transactions. There's still really good outcomes out there for sellers. It's good to have someone like us in your corner because we're not emotional, but guess what? When you're selling your business, at it becomes emotional, and so it's really good to have an intermediary, there every step of the way. www.sfpadvisors.com. All the contact information is directly on the website.
It's stupid. Just this morning, before you and I started recording, Tim, I shared with you, it was just a funny coincidence. I got a LinkedIn message from an HVAC contractor. It said, Marcus, I had a price guide. I've already sold $40,000 in business from Price Guide. I was getting 1 to 2 leads a week. Now I'm getting 3 to 5 a day. Okay? Do the math on that. Now, what we find is the average person gets a 300% lift when they have a pricing estimator on their website. Okay, in the home improvement space, 300% lift. What that means to you is if you're getting 5 leads a week from your website, you're going to get 15 now. Now, keep in mind this too. I just want to explain this a little bit further, Tim. Okay, and I know I'm just like a word vomit, but I'm passionate about this, so everybody's just going to have to work with me here. Right? So if you took the buyer's journey and you made it a straight line, and you started with the moment that they know they might need, let's say, a new HVAC unit, to the moment at the end of that line when they shake the hand of the salesperson and they sign the contract. When does pricing come into play? And this is the part that all these sales trainers out there, they don't understand because they haven't evolved with the time. All right? And that is you in the marketing phase, which, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, is 80% of the buyer's journey today, is the marketing phase. This is when they're researching online. This is when they're getting their facts together. And this is when they're making sure I'm not going to make a mistake. Okay, that's 80%. 20% is from the moment they fill out a form on a website to the moment they buy. Okay, so 80% of the dang journey is happening before you know they exist. So this is why this matters. If you take a timeline of this journey, straight line, it's at the beginning of that first 80%, before you know them, that they immediately have the question, oh my gosh, my HVAC unit broke. Roughly how much is this going to cost me? Oh my goodness. I got to find out, can I even afford this? Okay. They don't need a quote yet. They just want to know, am I in the game? As soon as they get that range, which they usually have to beat it out of people, especially in home improvement, which is embarrassing to our industry, by the way, and it only kills trust. All right? So as soon as they are able to get that, they're like, okay, I can move past that psychologically now. And then they do the rest of their research. Then they start to vet websites and companies. Then they fill out a form, either 1 to 5 companies, okay? Then they make a decision. And right before the decision point, that's when price comes up again. So it's when these sales trainers say, don't bring price up until the end. Well, they're right to a degree. If you take the first 80%, you bring it up at the very beginning. In other words, you teach them about it on your website. And then you bring it up at the very end of the sales process. In other words, if you're a great salesperson, you don't go right into the home and you start your pitch and you say, okay, you could expect to spend, $15,000 today. I just want you to know that up front. No, you don't do that. You do that at the end of the pitch. But you see, you don't get to the pitch oftentimes if you're not willing to address that initial, roughly how much is this going to cost me at the beginning of the buyer's journey. That's Psychology 101. And so the moral of the story that I just tried to explain, maybe I did well or didn't, is that it's on both ends of the buyer's journey when you talk about pricing. That's the appropriate times to do it. And any salesperson that tells you you should never address it in your marketing has no clue as to how to generate leads at the optimal level for your business. I have the data. The other side to this is I have a sales training company. What we do is interpersonal communication skills. I understand what a great pitch looks like. I'm really freaking awesome at it. At the same time, I understand what a great buyer's journey looks like on the marketing side. I've written a great book about it, right? It's like I got the data here, folks. And I'm only saying this because I almost lost my swimming pool business. I was this close to filing bankruptcy. And I know how many companies right now, and there's a crap storm of businesses right now that are struggling to get leads. You know this, Tim. This is your game. This is what makes you guys great at Hook, is you help people get leads. This is why I like your agency. I'm a big believer in Hook, by the way, and he didn't ask me to say that. I love his agency. And so the thing about this is We've got a problem with leads right now across the board in home improvement. During COVID, we are in the COVID rainbow. We were fat and happy, and everybody had more leads than they ever needed, and they could be pretty lazy with their marketing, and they could do a lot of those things that they didn't, have to do now. Now you've got a proper business you got to run. You have to have proper sales and marketing. And what does that mean? Understanding exactly what the buyer wants. Let me give you one other stat. 75% of all buyers today say they would prefer to have a seller-free sales experience. 75% of all buyers say they would prefer to have a seller-free sales experience. Now chew on those apples here for a second. If you think about that and you complain about it, it's not going to help you, by the way, because I've learned very early on, it doesn't help us to complain about trends in business. It doesn't help us to complain about the fact that everybody loves video and we don't love being on video. We got to get over it because we said we're going to be an entrepreneur. And the moment you said you're going to be an entrepreneur, you said, I'm going to meet the homeowner, in this case, where they are. The buyer, the consumer. I'm going to meet them where they are. I'm going to get over my opinions and I'm going to get over myself, right? And so that's what we have to do. So 75% of all buyers say they would prefer to have a seller-free sales experience. What does this mean? It doesn't mean we hate salespeople. It just means I don't want to talk to a salesperson until I'm informed, until I'm comfortable, until I'm ready, until I feel like I'm not going to make any mistakes.
Yep.
I can tell you at this point now, because Price Guide has been out for about 6 months, and I've got hundreds of users and like all these home improvement companies that are using it, and I'm getting the reports now almost every single day. Someone saying, "Oh my goodness, Marcus, massive lift in leads. Thank you so much. I was spending so much on freaking Google Ads, which are becoming ultimately for many people less and less effective, right?
Mm-hmm.
Still work, but they're just getting harder to work, right? So you better have if you're going to be doing paid ads and you're going to be sending people to your website, you have to give them every reason to convert. The problem is a lot of people send them, as you know, Tim, from an ad. They land on the site, all right, and the site says get pricing, and then they want you to fill out a form. That's like going on one date and asking the person, will you sleep with me? It's not fair and it's not appropriate because you haven't earned their trust yet, right? And so instead of that, you need to actually do something in the middle of that before you say, hey, can we consummate this relationship? You need to do something before that makes them say, oh, okay, oh, I understand. Now I have a sense for how this works. And that's why a pricing estimator tool is such a game changer in the market. And this is why I'm so excited about, in this case, Price Guide.
And, there's tons of questions that people have about price, and this is partly what I'm trying to flesh out for my talk at AHR here in a second. And it will have already happened, but the questions that lead to this too, right? Because you can create all these different entry points, whether it's videos or blogs or short form video, like long form YouTube, short form reels, et cetera, right? That lead to this pricing estimator. You can put it out on Facebook groups when somebody's asking about an HVAC plumber in your area and say, lead with pricing transparency. This is something I'm recommending because I don't know if you're part of any of those local groups, but it's like, somebody's throwing hot dogs at the face kind of scenario in these groups. It feels crazy probably to the homeowner how many people get tagged. But if you say, hey, we're the pricing transparent option in the area, that is still unusual, particularly for HVAC plumbers, home service businesses. It's still highly unusual, so you can cut through the noise by saying, hey, by the way, you can just check your price here on our website.
There's so many ways that you can, as soon as you have an estimator, okay, and notice I call it an estimator. I only call it a calculator.
Yeah.
Because some people misconstrue it, right? So the moment you have an estimator on your website, now everything gets better because you can run so many more campaigns. You can if you're doing a billboard, you can have a QR code that says get an instant price online or instant estimate online. Yeah. If you're doing that direct mailer, which by the way, direct mailers still work, believe it or not. All right, you can now get a lot more people to convert off of that direct mail because you can give them an instant price, right? In this case, an instant estimate. You
need a good hook for those things to work, right? No matter what it is, there needs to be something that actually makes them want to take action, and this is just decreases friction.
Everything about being successful with marketing is eliminating fear and friction and making it faster. Those are the three
Mm-hmm.
F's of a great user experience today.
Mm-hmm.
All right, eliminate fear, take away all friction. Friction is, you mean I've got to like call for quote, right? That's friction, right?
Mm-hmm.
Fear is them being too embarrassed when you tell them that it's going to be 15 grand, that they can't afford it. And so they don't want to talk to anybody because they don't want to be embarrassed to say, I'm sorry, we can't afford that. You see, this is one thing a lot of people don't realize. Folks oftentimes won't reach out to companies because they're too embarrassed. They feel like they'll be too embarrassed to say, I can't afford that right now,
Mm.
right? Now, you know, one thing about this too is how you draw attention to it. Because I've had people get an estimator before, and they're like, it didn't really work for me. I'm like, then let me look on your website. I'm like, it's pretty obvious why it didn't work. So one of the core things that you need to do to make this effective is on your home page, above the fold, right? So this is really one of the first sections. You should use a call to action phrase that sounds something like get instant pricing or get instant estimate.
Mm.
So you have to use the word instant. This is a really, really big deal because if it just says pricing, that's not effective because a lot of people are thinking that's just going to take me to a form that I can fill out,
Mm.
right? Whereas if it says get instant estimate, that's completely different.
Do you believe
Right?
it should be the primary call to action? Like for instance,
Answer yes, Tim.
okay.
You don't have to explain any further because I've done the tests on this when it comes to estimators. Now listen, I will say this though. Like I've got a new version of the River Pools website coming out.
Hey there, are you a home service business owner that's tired of your answering service just kicking the can down the road? Well, we can help. Pink Collars will assign a dedicated, supported, and trained individual to answer your phones, emails, texts, and even more. Give us a call at 888-325-7465, or better yet, check us out online, www.pinkcolors.com.
I talk a lot about what are called self-service tools in my new book, Endless Customers. And if you're listening to this right now, you can go to endlesscustomers.com. And you can pre-order it, and you get a bunch of extras with it. And you're going to want it. Trust me. I talk in the book about 5 self-service tools. A pricing estimator is just one of the 5. There's a bunch of others.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Another one that's really important, Tim, is an assessment tool. Now, this is actually very valuable in home contracting, and sometimes this is a 1-2 punch with an estimator. So an assessment tool basically says, do I even need this right now? Okay. Or how much, how close are my shingles to needing to be replaced? That's an example of it. How much lifespan is left with my HVAC unit? Right. That's an example of assessment tool. And so one of the questions that people are having is, should I do this right now? Is now the right time? How big is the need? How urgent is the need? So you solve that through self-assessment. So sometimes that might be one of the main CTAs that you see on the homepage, and next to that, it might be what is a pricing estimator. If you look at River Pools, we're coming out. We've got 3 that are hit you on the homepage right now that match the buyer's journey, Tim. The first one is a tool. I call this self-selection tool in the book. Basically gives you a recommendation. And so in this context, I know if I meet with somebody in the home and they haven't decided, do I want a fiberglass, a concrete, or a vinyl liner and ground pool yet, then chances of closing are much, much less. So I want them to know that before I come into the home. And so there's a tool that they interactive that asks them questions and then gives a recommendation. And it doesn't recommend fiberglass more than 50% of the time. It recommends one of our competing products that we don't sell. And so that tool is very powerful and addresses the what type of pool do I want. Now, there's another tool that you see immediately on the River Pools website for the person that's like, well, what type of shape and size do I want? Well, I don't assume they know. They have an interactive tool that allows them to discover that for themselves. The third one is the pricing estimator. I want to build and price my fiberglass pool. So notice they essentially follow where they are in the journey. What type of pool do I want? Okay, once I know I want fiberglass, what shape and size fiberglass pool do I want? And then number 3, how much is that one going to cost me roughly? It's the ultimate user experience. This is why River Pools became the fastest growing manufacturer in the world, because we were the only manufacturer that had a pricing estimator plus these other tools. Now, the one other tool that I'm adding to the River Pools site is the will I even use a pool if I buy one? Should I get a pool? How will that affect my life? That's an assessment tool, and that's going to be right there. But I can tell you in terms of conversions, Tim, and conversions, all right? This is far and away the most powerful way that you can get more leads from the existing visitors to your website at the lowest cost. The fact that people don't do it, the fact that more agencies don't recommend it, I believe is a crime against humanity. It is not okay, especially when we have a lot of contractors that are struggling right now. So I'm helping solve that problem. I'm bringing financial peace to these contractors by getting way, way more leads. And now you're in a position of leverage. You've got more trust. And now you can be more selective with your jobs. Your margins go back up and life is better again.
And people ask me, agencies, like I was just part of a mastermind down in Miami, and they're asking like why we put our pricing on our website, right? And it was kind of a push, actually, after I read your book, to be more transparent about ourselves. And there's times where you're ahead and behind of the curve, and in our case, I felt like that was a little ahead, like in certain ways. Another thing that was ahead, we were pushing people towards the Calendly really quick. Do you know what I mean? Where you don't want to be too far ahead of customer expectations sometimes.
Yeah, that's
Is this
an
too
example
far ahead?
of
Is this
yeah.
this too far ahead, or is this what customers do expect in home services?
Yeah. So I mean, there's a couple different questions that you asked there, but one, like in terms of an agency, I think ultimately your job as an agency is to give them a feel for how much they're going to spend with an agency and to give them a sense for how much they're going to spend with you. I don't think you should necessarily give exact numbers, but you should at least give everyone a sense. That is what we call the golden rule. And if you're familiar with a book that's about 2,000 years old,
Yeah,
that golden rule is still as valid today as it was then.
yeah.
And so most
And
of
it's
this
good for business. I believe the golden rule is really good for business, personally.
yeah, well, it's good for life.
Yeah.
And so it shouldn't you shouldn't have to be convinced to follow the golden rule, whether you're a Christian or not, because inherently you know that it's true. And inherently everything I've described so far, you've said, yeah, I would appreciate that if I was the consumer, if I was the buyer.
hmm
The problem is we don't treat our buyers as we ourselves would want to be treated. To me, that's not okay, and we should. So, this is one of those things where every home improvement company, I will guarantee you, within 5 years, 90% will have some type of pricing estimator on their website. I'm not going to say for a second that you should give an exact quote. By the way, that's level 4 if you give an exact quote. All right, like an exact number. And the reason why I don't think that is required for home improvement is because there are still so many variables that you're going to find when you get to the home. In my case, somebody says my yard is flat. I get out there and it's got a 6-foot fall from one end to the other, and they're going to need a massive retaining wall. It's going to be $25,000, and they didn't account for that, right?
hmm
And so it's one of those things where we're still going to have to verify in the home. Which is why you're still going to have salespeople, I think, for a long time in home improvement, but they're going to be more aligned with the whole, just like design the project versus actual just answering a lot of those fundamental questions that people have already had answered. You know, the every industry we see dominoes fall, and as soon as a few dominoes fall, Tim, everybody has to follow suit. And this is what's happening right now. One of your peers is going to have a pricing estimator. It's going to have a great pricing page. It's going to have a great pricing video, and they're going to win the market, and they're going to beat you. Or you can say, you know what, I'm gonna make the rules here, and I'm gonna make everybody else the rule follower. But that's your choice. You can be a rule maker, but to be a rule maker, you got to be a rule breaker, or you can be a rule follower. It's always a choice that you have in business. So don't do it like everybody else. Inherently trust your gut on this one, because your gut says, yep, that's what I would want. Be more transparent with pricing. Understand how it works in that timeline that I shared earlier. Understand that you talk about price twice in the buyer's journey, at the beginning and at the end. And if you do that, you're going to be way effective. And stop listening to bad sales trainers that have no concept of what great marketing and lead gen looks like.
I dig it. Yeah, because a lot of people, it's the phone call, and they say be standoffish with the price. I don't know how they actually say it, but essentially the idea is to be standoffish with the price.
They should have already gotten a range, and so that's the whole problem.
Yeah.
The flaw was that they've called you now. You're at the beginning of the 20% mark.
Yeah.
You see, That's not what we just said.
Yeah.
We said at the beginning and the end.
Yeah.
We didn't say at the beginning of the 20% mark, the final 20%. You see, that's wrong. That's
Gotcha.
wrong.
Yeah. That's good.
When they call you,
yeah.
they should say, hey, I took that tool on your website. It was really, really helpful.
Yeah.
I got a sense for how much it is. Thanks for that. I think I'd like to have somebody out.
Yeah. The other thing is, I don't know if this is from you, because I mean, I've read your book a couple times, had a whole team read your book a couple times. They ask you, answer. Very good. Read your other one too. Gonna read the next one. What is it again?
Endless Customers. You can find it at endlesscustomers.com.
We will 100% be reading that as well. And I don't know if I took this from you, but like when they ask, why are you more expensive? That's a question I love. I love why are you more expensive? And I feel like it increases all the different ways that you can talk about price in content. So I'm a video guy. I believe like you should be answering all these questions in video. We send out a video as soon as somebody becomes a lead on our website. Hopefully you got that with the 7.
We call that in the book the 80% video. It's awesome. And you sent it out. I was so impressed.
I was wondering if you're like, because if I don't think we told the story, but Marcus was talking to us about services at one point, like Google Ads or something like that.
But let's clarify.
Yeah.
I'm going to be working with Tim to a degree with some of my companies.
Yeah.
Look, we could put it out there.
Yeah.
Right. It's okay. And that's how Tim and I got to know each other. And so, yeah, Tim does things really, really well. Especially with video. I was very impressed. I could see the impact of like they ask you answer on you. Like it was glorious to watch. I was like, this company's a bunch of gangsters.
So we send out that video with the top 7 questions that they ask in the sales process. We do that every single year. We refilm it and we make it nice. You know, we try to make the production value good, B-roll, all that. And a lot of times the things are going through my head as we're creating this content, because we also put out those videos separately and then we embed them all over the website. And this is all from Marcus. And we are trying to answer that question, why are you more expensive? In fact, we have the video, why are you more expensive? And I love it. I love it. And I think price anchoring people high is not a bad thing. And also, when people are saying you're more expensive and asking that question, why are they more expensive? It's actually really great for positioning. And there's a lot of questions that come out of that.
Yeah, but I would actually argue from my research with you and other contractors, I actually don't view you as more expensive because you are so much better than everybody else.
Yeah.
I just, for what you are giving everyone, for what you like, for what you do. And so when you put in the context of the value that one is getting, you're actually less expensive.
Yeah.
You just deliver a heck of a lot more for a higher average price than the market, but you're delivering a better experience. So my mindset is actually you're not more expensive. You're just delivering more, and it costs a little bit more to get that.
And that your content should answer that. Your sales process should answer that. Marcus, I know you got to get out of here. I have really enjoyed having you on. Thank you.
Let's do it again, Tim.
Yeah.
You got to make it a habit.
Oh, I would 100% have you on as much as you'd let me have you on. So appreciate you being here. Can you say the websites for the book and the price guide real quick?
Yeah, endlesscustomers.com is the book. Priceguide.ai is the tool. And your competitor's going to be using it any day, so make sure you beat them to it.
And appreciate everything. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Podcast is put on by hookagency.com. Hook Agency all over social media. Thank you, Marcus, and see you again soon.
My pleasure.